Welcome to Mindfulness Manufacturing. My name is Trevor Blondeel. Spending 25 years in manufacturing, I discovered the real impact we have on turnover, communication, and the ability to manage change is how we show up. That's the essence of emotional intelligence. In each episode, we bring a guest or message to expand your skills, engage your people, and grow your organization. So let's jump in. I heard a quote this morning that mindfulness is much better than mindlessness. And pretty hard to argue that one, but we don't often look at it in that extreme, right? Like I don't want to walk around being mindless in the manufacturing plant. And also, I want a functional team. No one talks about having a dysfunctional team. There's no podcast on that. But there are lots of resources around like, how do you have that functional team? Because my experience in manufacturing is when I had a great team, I got great results. And that has transferred even into being the president of the National Speakers Association for Kentucky. And I learned a lot because I had a great president that I followed. And I got him on as a guest today. Mark Kenny, welcome.
Thanks, Trevor. You made it easy. It was great to work with you in that context. Thanks for having me.
So here's the truth is that I said to you, Mark, when we started working together, I was like, hey, I know that you've done a lot of work with teams and you've got a book written on it. And I want to see you level up this chapter, right? Because we have a lot of great professional speakers, but we weren't as connected and as smooth as we could be. And I tell you, the work that you did, Mark, to take this volunteer organization and get us really aligned and functioning better together, it was just a wonderful experience. And I got to follow that now. And we have a great board we just kicked off for this year. So thanks for putting us in this position, man.
You are welcome. And thank you for taking the reins and building on that foundation.
So you've worked with manufacturing companies through your career. You've done software and IT. You had your own company. And then you got in, like myself, into speaking and into helping companies so that you eliminate the territorial thinking so that they can build a functional, collaborative, and aligned team. Yeah, we want that. But how did you get into this team mastery?
I've always loved teams ever since I was a little kid and was a Green Bay Packers fan. Like I was just enthralled with the idea of teams. I played basketball and soccer in high school. I coached my daughter's high school girls basketball team. And in my previous life in IT and then in running the software company, I got to go in and see all these different teams and all these organizations. And I was just throwing software over the fence and helping them with some operational stuff. But I really saw the difference between those that really had a functional team that was aligned and collaborative and working together, and those that didn't and were misaligned. Most of them just weren't aligned, and you could tell that. There
Mhm.
wasn't as much joy. People weren't as satisfied and fulfilled. The results weren't there. That just created an urgency in me to figure out how can I help all of these clients become a functional, collaborative, aligned team that really works together, because that really changes the game. It changes everything.
Okay, so you said about the joy, and you could tell when people like working together and you got that good energy, it's better. And this is interesting from a contractor's point of view, right? Like from someone that doesn't work for the company, but you're working for the company to help them implement the software. So what did it impact for you as an outsider supporting that company in those two different types of teams?
I'll give you an example. There was one client I worked with, and I remember this because this was the point that made me think, am I even doing the right thing? Because I met with the head of this agency. It was a government agency. And they have this vision and desire for what the software is going to do and how it's going to change
Hmm.
the operations. And the very same day, I go down and meet with a couple levels down to talk about implementing it. And there's just a total disconnect.
Hmm.
These people are like, well, we already have something like that. And I don't really understand what they want. It makes my job a whole lot more difficult
Yes.
because not everyone is moving in the same direction. And so we end up just wasting a bunch of time trying to figure out what we're trying to do and create that alignment in the first place. Otherwise, I'm just throwing software over the fence.
Mm. Yeah, because even for us as a National Speakers Association, we're looking to redefine the role of the administrator. It was very interesting because the person that we're talking to serves some other chapters and is very busy. And it was really a back and forth interview of, is your chapter working together well enough as a team for me to want to serve them? And I was like, ooh, I like that. It's like we realize that, hey, we all want to work with great teams. So when we're talking about one of the biggest challenges in manufacturing is recruitment and retention, then hey, you just said it. Even as a contract, you're not even working for them full time. But if you want to work for someone full time, you want to be connected. You want to know that, hey, if we're going to implement a new software, that from the top to the shop, we're going to know what's going on and why we're doing the software.
We're not just doing the software to do it. We're doing it because it helps us get to where we want to go. We're all moving in the same direction and we're rowing the same direction. It helps us get there. And you said something earlier, like everybody wants to be on a aligned team, and that's fun and collaborative. But I don't think we really know everybody knows how to do that
Mhm.
or has the confidence to really build that sort of team environment. But we all want to, for sure.
Yeah, I remember being pulled into a boardroom and we were in a manufacturing plant and we were in launch mode. And one of the managers are like, hey, so are you with those guys or are you on our team? This is like on the same management team. And I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about, but this does not sound good. Like, I don't
Mm,
see what good is going to come out of this. And I don't need to be protected. And I don't need this. This just felt wrong. And we end up getting some help from the outside to bring us together. So
yes.
it was a happy ending. But it was like, oh, this is interesting. I was a younger manager and not really sure how to navigate that.
And I bet you've experienced this as well. I remember I worked in a manufacturing company once when I was on the IT side, but there was this gap between the office folks and the shop folks on the floor. We're maybe like 20 feet from where the floor was, but there were these little gaps and disconnects and different views
Hmm.
and what we thought about each other. It's just really interesting to sit back and watch that. I think it's just natural for that to happen unless we really are intentional about getting everybody on the same page.
Unless we're intentional. That is the difference. We see manufacturing plants, and that's the common phrase, right? It's the wall between the office and the plant. And what's unique in manufacturing, a lot of these plants are independent. They could be a private ownership. And so you're going to
Mhm,
have the support staff, the indirect labor in the same building as the direct labor.
mhm,
And the more connected those two are, and the less they feel like they're different teams, then the
mhm.
more dynamic and better decisions you're going to make.
If we use that example, like there's some teams on the office side, there's some teams on the floor. What's happening above that? What's happening to the team that's above that, the leadership team or whatever it is? Because if that team isn't working together and cohesive and connected, then how in the world is everybody else going to be? So that really is the starting point, is for that team to do the work, the intentional work of building a team. Because oftentimes folks at that level, they'll look at, I'm the VP of
Mhm.
quality
Yep.
or manufacturing or finance, and they look at it as that's my team. But really, this is their team up here. I'm a team member of this team. How can we make this team great? That's the first thing to do.
Yeah, and one of I read your book, The Hippo Solution, and one of the topics in there was around so simple, but it's rare to find an engaged workforce than if the leadership team is not engaged. It really does start there, right? And no matter what position you are in the plant, you can have influence, suggestions of, can we have some communication on this, or how could we be more engaged? How could we get better information from the subject matter expert that's running the machines when we're sourcing a contractor for an improvement project on this capital
Mhm,
equipment? There's different options in there. It's much easier when that senior leadership team starts first. And that's why we'll get calls at Manufacturing Greatness to do supervisor training. And I'm like, we don't really do that. I say, oh, you don't train supervisors? And so we
mhm,
don't. But what we've learned is that your investment of your time and money, it does not get the same ROI if your executive team or your leadership team or your steering team goes through it first.
yeah.
And then if we do that, it's that chocolate fountain. And whatever chocolate, if it's good chocolate coming out of the top, then you can dip in the bottom. It's going to be good there too. But if
Mhm.
the chocolate's not high quality coming out of the top, it's going to struggle through the whole organization.
when that chocolate is coming out and it's good quality, then everything changes.
Mm,
They buy into it and they build that connectedness and the right behaviors and the clarity and all those pillars that it takes to really build a team. Then everything changes for everybody else when they're intentional, and it does start there.
one of the things that I found was helpful that you did working on your team, Mark, was at the beginning of the meetings at the offsite we had to kick off. We spent some good time thinking, like, why do we exist? Like,
Mhm.
where are we going? And then you would repeat that mantra at the beginning of each of our board meetings and many of our meetings. And I was bought in from the beginning because I was like, yeah, this makes sense. And really, it really helped ground me and the rest of the board and others of, yeah, what are we focused on? What are we trying to get here? So
Mhm.
what are those, if someone wants to follow those types of steps, like what are those steps to do that?
If I could back up just a little bit at a higher level, there's some pillars I think that really make a
All
team
right.
function. So one of those is being connected with you, like just building that deeper connection with each other. I know you talk about and are passionate about being curious about what other people's
Oh
story
yeah.
is
Yes.
and raise your level of curiosity, being curious about my team
Mm-hmm.
and about each other on the team and raising that level of curiosity so we understand each other's stories and we know each other at a deeper level. I think that's one of the pillars. So we start to develop those relationships. And then there's cohesion. Are we actually behaving as a team? Are we exhibiting trust? Are we having debate around ideas? Are we committing to what we've said we're going to do? A working group? Or
Mm-hmm.
are we actually a team? And what are those behaviors? So that's another pillar, like building that
Mm,
cohesion. And then the third pillar is clarity. I mentioned those other pillars first because I think usually they have to come first. Because if we don't have the connection and we're not really operating as a team, it's really hard to develop that level of clarity together.
I like that.
But then clarity, it's really just answering. To me, clarity is just everyone having the same answers to the same questions. And there's a couple models I use out there. One, I love Patrick Lencioni's organizational health model, which is just having the conversation and the debate around why do we exist? Like, how do we behave? What do we actually do? How are we going to be successful? What are the three anchors that are going to anchor our success? Because we can't be good at everything. So, what are we going to commit to being really good at in our organization, on our team? And then what's the most important right now? Because everything can't be important all the time. So, if
Mm.
you just, to get back to your question, if you have the conversation, we're behaving as a team, we have that connection, and we're all developing, have the same answers to those same questions. And then you communicate that and repeat that over and over again. It really isn't that complicated, but it's just coming up with the same answers to the same questions. And then, like you said, starting every meeting, every time we're talking, every time interacting with people, we're reminding ourselves, reminding people of what we've said is important. Alan
Yep.
Mulally used to do this. I know you mentioned Alan Mulally
Yes.
before. Like that, he had the little business card and he would talk to people and say, hey, this is what's important. This is how we're behaving. It's just doing those basic things.
We'll put some links in the show notes, but yeah, we have Alan Mulally turned forward around in the 2010 period, and his book is on the website. So is Patrick Lencioni's Five Dysfunctions of a Team. His most recent one, which I got to experience through you, Mark, was The Working Genius. And that was just six different ways and how people work. We can all do certain parts of our role, but some of it gives more joy than the other. So now it's a great answer because when I think back, you spent some time on just getting us to know each other better as board members.
Yes.
And that's just a good step on your own team because we trust people that we know. And then we also like to see consistency, right? That is the true person. And I know that I know where they're coming from. I believe that they're going to tell me what I need to hear. And actually, Patrick, the way he defined politics was saying something in such a way to really appease others
Yes.
and influence others' decisions. That's politics. And
Yes.
then the opposite, I feel, is just having that safe environment where if you have the attitude of curiosity, you can get away with not wording it properly.
Yes. That's right. And think about how much energy we spend thinking about how other people are going to react. or respond or what they're thinking instead of trying to come up with a great solution or trying to achieve something amazing together as a team. I think we waste a lot of time in that and a lot of frustration and a lot of angst to just trying to play the politics and play the game. Unnecessary turbulence.
Yes, turbulence. There's some good. Mark is a pilot and has some good stories. I loved how you can take some of those just metaphors of navigating a plane and how does that tie into a team and how, man, you got to have everything when you're in the air and you just got those wings and that engine, you got to have everything coordinated well before you take off.
Yes, that's right. That's right. Yeah, I almost did that as a career. I didn't, but that was a while ago, but I love that. My son is doing that now, so that's fun. But
Yeah, your son's in the book and he's flying now too. So that I really connected with that. That helped me understand it a little better too. And it's amazing when we take our personal sides, because we both talk about our sons, some of the
mhm.
work that we do. And I really find it helps myself and others just connect better. Because if you're functioning better as a team at work, there's a good chance you might function better as a family.
Yes, 100%. Or leading teams than anything else because I actually had to really do it and trying to get this group together and what it really takes to be competitive and not just be competitive, to be more of a transformational coach than just winning on the court. I learned a lot from doing that as well. It's because so teams are everywhere. Like we're always learning and have to have that humility and vulnerability to continue to do things better when we're leading these teams.
So how would I, if I'm driving, listening, coming in right now, connect to that? Because what I remember you talking about is there's an aspect of we got to have for hire an engineer that they need to know what engineering is and have some
Mhm.
skills around that. And
Yes.
then as a basketball coach, you have to focus some part on the fundamental, I call it blocking and tackling, but the fundamental
Yes.
aspects of basketball.
Yes.
And but you said what did you really learn coming out of that? It wasn't about the
So
dribbling.
So in basketball, there's the fundamentals. Let's call it the X's and O's.
Okay.
Like we have to be able to shoot, we have to be able to dribble, we have to be able to pass, we have to be able to play defense. We have to do all those basic basketball fundamentals. Everybody's going to be focusing on those. Like the teams we compete against are going to be focused on those.
Hmm.
It's a given we have to be focused on those. But one thing I've really learned is that what really makes the difference on a team, it it's really those intangibles, like how we're the culture of the team, how I'm viewing my players as a coach. So for example, am I looking at my players with the right eyes? Am I looking at them as they have the skill or not? Or am I looking at them as they're doing the best with what they know? And like really getting to know my players and help them get to know each other, instilling values that behave on the court as individuals. Like gratitude is one of our values.
Mm.
Instilling gratitude really changes the culture on the court. Instilling like competitive greatness, like what does that mean? So to answer your question, I think there's all these X's and O's, like the actual fundamentals, but then instilling the culture, actually getting them to work together as a team, build those relationships, be clear in what we're going to be good at. It's all the same things. The intangibles are what really, I think it's both and. So I think it's the same thing in business. I don't think anyone is going to hire someone that doesn't know, isn't able to do the basic work. But I think what really makes the difference is being intentional about pulling that together into a great culture, a great team, great leaders, all driving in the same direction. That changes the game. It's not just how do I operate the mold machine?
Yeah, if you're ask the VP of quality, who's your team? That's the quality team. That's a problem if it is because you've got a entire leadership team, and if you're putting your quality people above the company itself, then that starts a dysfunction right there. So it's
100.
so I relate that to the basketball part of someone just taking the ball from one end of the court to the other, and if they got the blinders on and they don't see everybody else, they're just going to march down and do the best that they can. And manufacturing, it's hard sometimes, right? To give up maybe staff from your own department to help another department. So if you don't have some type of a personal relationship to make those sacrifices in the budget or with manpower, resources and I got to give that up to another department, I have to be thinking that I trust this person, that I want them to be successful, and truly believe that this will elevate us entirely as a team and there's a greater cause.
Yes. I think there's a mindset shift there that's necessary is what is my team? What's my first team? It's not the QA team. It's the leadership team. So I've got to
Mhm.
switch that in my mind that this is my first team up here, not the QA team. Because otherwise I'm going to prioritize my the people in the QA department instead of what's better for the organization.
So when you see this work with other companies, because I know you've worked with government and you're in Tennessee and you got a lot going on with a lot of opportunities close to Nashville, and there's a lot of manufacturing around there as well. When it's gone well, and there's a team that you've worked with and they know they could be better. Tell us a story of what does it look like when it works well and you work with others.
There's a team that comes to mind that I was working with, and they were in real estate. And they came to me because they had heard about me from a friend. It's oftentimes the same story. It's not necessarily that things are horrible or terrible. It's just we're not having fun. Like it feels like we're
Mm,
apart. We don't really know what we're trying to accomplish. We're just stuck and frustrated. That oftentimes is the story in the beginning. It's like we're doing the things we feel like we're supposed to do, but we're pulling apart. We're not really gelling together as a team. Something's wrong and it's frustrating. And from the leader's perspective, it's I'm not really sure how to fix it. Like it's not that I don't want to, but I'm just not sure how to do it. And that's really what I do is basically give them the framework, the proven framework for this is how you transform the team and thus the organization. So that was the before, and walking through the process afterwards is we're, we're having conversations that we haven't had before. We're vulnerable with each other. We know where we're going. We have a framework for how to do things. And probably the biggest difference that you see is in meetings. Like I remember them, one of them said, you sprinkle dust on our weekly meetings, and they're like totally different now.
nice.
Because meetings are where the work of the team is. It's just a totally different feeling. We're heading in the same direction. We have conversations we haven't had before, and we're able to accomplish more than we were before because we're all doing the same thing together.
And if you don't want to go to the meeting, then it's probably not a good meeting. I love how Patrick Lynch writes about that a lot of it should be like a movie. It should be engaging conversation, should be interesting. And if it's not, then you need to step back. So it's like that combination then, Mark. You brought that structure where I knew what was coming into the board meeting. I knew what we are going to
Mhm.
talk about. I knew what important decisions we need to make. I was clear what my role was in that meeting. I think that's why the board meetings, which now end on time, because everybody loves a meeting that ends on time. So that's another trick. But yeah, the working genius, and we'll leave a link to that as well. But I think that really helped is that when you understand this model talks about different areas and how we think, like wonder, where we ask a lot of questions and think about things differently and gives you joy. And you have a lot of the wonder, Mark. And then we both have some of that tenacity, which is the other extreme, is I just like to make sure we get it done. I
Mhm.
just like to finish it properly, dot those I's, cross the T's. If we're going to do it, let's do it well. But not everybody likes that. Just appreciating each other's a little bit different, leveraging each other a little bit more. It just makes it a game changer. If you're not having fun, that's not good either. If you're a winning team and you're not having fun, then I'm curious about that one.
Yeah, exactly. You can tell walking through a manufacturing floor what the vibe is. You
Yeah.
can tell on a team what the vibe is. Sit in a meeting, you can tell what the vibe is. Are
Yeah.
people satisfied, having fun?
Eye
Yes.
contact, laughing,
Hmm.
and just genuinely recognizing other people. That's really what I see is that when I see some people saying hello and interacting a little bit, it can
Yes.
tell me a lot about their safety, quality, and productivity.
Yeah. And are we having conversations together as a team in the meeting, or are we having side conversations afterwards? Like you
Yeah.
just
So easy. So
you can
easy to
tell.
tell. It's just, okay. Well, that's sometimes a good question I like to ask. It's what's the conversation that we're not having today?
Yes, I love that question. That's right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
What's beneath all that? Mark, it's been great. What the listeners are going to say, hey, I heard Mark Kenny talk about teams. What's the one message? What's the one vibe you want them to walk into the plant with today?
I think just like on a basketball court, like you have to practice working together. You have to practice teamwork. Like you have to prioritize it. You have to go out there and practice teamwork. And you could start with just building some connections and relationships. Go be curious, ask questions, be curious about your team. What's working, what's not, what's great for them? What do we need to do different to go practice teamwork?
I promise you, even if you're a team leader running a small manufacturing line today, you can just do this with your own team and you can separate yourself from the average because it doesn't take capital. It takes conversations.
Hmm.
We can transform this industry. Mark, thanks so much. I appreciate everything you've done for me personally. It's just been a pleasure working with you. You continue to support us through the National Speakers Association. And I've said this before, man, if you're looking for help on building teams, I would recommend Mark. I've seen it and felt it firsthand, and I just appreciate everything that you've shared with our listeners today. Thanks so much, man.
You're welcome. Right back at you. I had a great time. Thanks, Trevor, for inviting me.
Hey folks, appreciate you taking the time to join us today. If you enjoyed this episode, share it with someone. Haven't subscribed yet? Do it now. Remember, if you want results, the key is increasing your awareness of how you show up.